Welcome back to HR Notes to File, where we spend time learning all type of interesting PHR and SPHR exam content. The only difference here is we like to put a little flair on it, where we have a little bit of fun while we learn these concepts. This particular game is called the SPHR Acronyms. The rules are in front of you, and it is as simple as it sounds. The goal is to identify the acronym before the buzzer goes off. If you identify it correctly, you're going to give yourself the number of points that correspond to the question timer. So for example, if the timer is 40 seconds, you're going to give yourself 40 points if you identify the acronym correctly before the buzzer sounds off. Obviously, it goes without saying, but we're going to say it anyway. Do not Google the answers. If you cheat, the only person that loses is you, because the day of the exam, do you think Google is available? I think not. At the bottom of the screen here, we have the time acronym, the time increments that we may see come up today. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30, 40 seconds, 1 minute, and 2 minutes. If you identify the answer correctly for a 1 or 2 minute question, you're going to give yourself 100 points or 200 points respectively. Without further ado, let's have a little fun.
Are you ready? Go!
B2B. What does B2B stand for? B2B stands for business to business. This one is a simple one. We like to kind of start it quick and easy before we kind of get a little bit more progressively tougher. Give yourself 10 points if you identify this before the buzzer went off.
Are you ready? Go!
B2C. What does B2C stand for? All right, guys, these first two are quite simple, really. B2C stands for business to consumer or business to customer. Either one is fine. This is all about who you sell your product or your services to. Do you sell your business to another company, or do you sell your business to a consumer directly? Okay, this is all about the channel of how you of who you sell to is what these two questions are about. All right, let's keep going.
Are you ready? Go!
CDC. This is another one that should come very quick and easy to everyone. We've been hearing this term quite a bit over the last few years. Time's up. CDC stands for Centers for Disease Control. Centers for Disease Control. Again, we've got 3 that we just had put up here, and everybody should really have 30 points at this point because all 3 of those were quite simple. Okay, let's see if they're going to get more challenging.
Are you ready? Go!
BLS. This one's a little bit sticky. BLS. What does this stand for? For 20 points. BLS. The Bureau of Labor Statistics. BLS stands for the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Okay, that one's a little bit more challenging, so maybe we're starting to see some people fall off with the points here. Let's keep going.
Are you ready? Go!
CBA. What does CBA stand for? We've got 20 seconds on the clock, and we've got 20 points up in the air for a taken. What does CBA stand for? Time's up. Did you know this one? CBA stands for Collective Bargaining Agreement. If you have ever worked inside of a union house or a union shop, you should absolutely know what a CBA stands for. That's essentially the formal term for the union contract. It's the collective bargaining agreement.
Are you ready? Go!
CPH. What does CPH stand for 20 points? Couple seconds left. All right, time's up. CPH stands for cost per hire. Cost per hire. This is a KPI that is in the space of our talent acquisition folks. By the way, if you know what KPI stands for, give yourself an additional 5 points because that's another acronym. CPH stands for cost per hire.
Are you ready? Go!
Okay, this one's a bit tough. We have all heard this term before, but not a lot of people know what it actually stands for. BARS, commonly referred to as bars. What does bars in the HR space stand for? All right, time's up. BARS stands for Behaviorally Anchored Rating Scale. Behaviorally Anchored Rating Scale. This is all about whenever you have a rating system. So think of performance review, or if you use a scorecard for interviewing. If you have a rating system, the bars is all about that 4 or 5 or 3-point system, and what behaviors that essentially are anchored to that particular number. Again, we have all heard the term bars. A lot of people don't actually know what it stands for. If you got that correct, give yourself 30 points.
Are you ready? Go!
CPI. What does CPI stand for 30 points? Got a little bit less than 10 seconds left. What does CPI stand for? Time's up. That buzzer sure does go fast, doesn't it? CPI stands for Consumer Price Index. Consumer Price Index. We've heard a lot about this in relation to inflation. CPI stands for Consumer Price Index.
Are you ready? Go!
Okay, we're getting in a bit of a tougher territory. This question is a 40-second question, which means if you get it correct before the buzzer sounds, you will be rewarded with 40 points. What does BCP stand for? B as in boy, C as in cat, P as in Peter. BCP. What does it stand for? All right, time's up. BCP stands for Business Continuity Plan. We heard a lot about this term around COVID, as companies were having to be very strategic and mindful about the impacts that the uncertainty that COVID brought to their businesses. So more than likely, if you are a senior HR leader, you were being brought into conversations around developing the BCP, the business continuity plan, of how to keep the business going during the uncertainty of COVID. If you got that correct, give yourself 40 points.
Are you ready? Go!
We've got another 40-second question here. COLA. What does COLA stand for? Few seconds left. All right, the time is up for 40 points. What did you guess? COLA stands for Cost of Living Adjustment. Cost of Living Adjustment. It's also okay if you put Cost of Living Allowance. This has to do a lot with, again, we talked about inflation. So if you work on a compensation team, you understand the COLA and you really, really track that when giving recommendations around what your merit budget should be. COLA, Cost of Living Adjustment.
Are you ready? Go!
All right, we've got a really tough one here. We've got a 1-minute acronym. We've got 100 points up in the air for grabs. This is another acronym that we hear quite a bit. However, a lot of folks don't actually know what it stands for. BFOQ. What does BFOQ stand for? Less than 10 seconds to go. All right, time is up. If you got this one correct, there's 100 points in the air. BFOQ stands for Bona Fide Occupational Qualification. Bona Fide Occupational Qualification. This has a lot to do with reasonable accommodation. If one of your employees is requesting a reasonable accommodation, you are normally spending time trying to understand if the thing that you are asking them to do, if it's a bona fide occupational qualification, meaning it's a requirement of the job. Okay, got one more. Let's go.
Are you ready? Go!
We've got 2 minutes on the clock for this one, meaning that if you identify it correctly before that buzzer sounds off, you're going to give yourself 200 points. This is also a term we hear quite often. Surprisingly, a lot of people don't know what it actually stands for. What does COBRA stand for? COBRA, commonly referred to as COBRA. What does COBRA stand for? We've got about 1 minute left. What does COBRA stand for? Ten seconds left. We've got 200 points on the line. You need to identify each letter correctly. Okay, time's up. Remember, each letter has to be identified correctly. We don't do half points or quarter of points or anything of that nature. If you don't get every single one of these letters correct, you do not receive any points. COBRA stands for the Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act. The Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act. COBRA is a benefits-related term. So if you work in the benefits space, you absolutely use the word COBRA on a regular basis. So how did you do? Tell us in the comments. Add up all your points, drop a note in the comments, and do a little bragging about how you did. Hope you had fun playing this game. The thing to keep in mind, you're not going to find yourself sitting in front of the computer taking the exam where they're going to have too many questions where they're going to ask you to define the actual acronym. You may only find that question will come up once or twice during the 3 hours that you are taking that exam, where they ask you to identify the acronym. The reason why we play this game is if a word comes up on your screen and you don't know what it means, more than likely you're not even sure which HR discipline it falls into, meaning you aren't sure if it's a leadership and development or training term, if it's an employment law term, if it's a benefits and comp term. If there are concepts that came up in front of you that you are not familiar with, take note of that and spend some time studying and researching the term and making sure you understand all of the origins around what that means. Again, I hope you had a good time. Obviously, I hope you learned a couple of things. And until the next video, happy studying.